The Royal International Air Tattoo 2025 began with a roar, but few expected the thunder to come from the east. As the morning mist clung to the runways of RAF Fairford in Gloucestershire, a new sound pierced the sky. The unmistakable engine note of Pakistan's JF-17 Thunderfighters echoed across the field, announcing the arrival of the Pakistan Air Force contingent. This wasn't just a ceremonial arrival, it was history being written in real time. The PAF's participation in Riot has always held symbolic importance, but 2025 marked a turning point. From the very first second, it was clear that this year, Pakistan wasn't just attending, they were arriving with a mission, a message, and a momentum few had seen coming. The arrival formation was tight, disciplined, and executed with the kind of precision that reflects thousands of hours of training, flanked by transport, aircraft, and logistics teams. The fighter formation swept in with a coordinated flypast, followed by a textbook perfect landing sequence. Cameras clicked rapidly. International press correspondents whispered to each other. Even some seasoned NATO officers were visibly impressed. What caught everyone off guard was the detail, the clean livery on the jets, the near-ceremonial choreography of ground crew disembarkation, and the sheer confidence of the pilots as they emerged from their cockpits. They didn't walk, they strode out like men and women on a mission. As the ground teams moved in to secure and service the aircraft, British officers approached the PAF delegation to extend formal welcomes. This wasn't the usual diplomatic exchange of handshakes. There was a palpable respect in the air. After all, very few non-NATO air forces get such central placement at Riot, especially during a year as politically charged as 2025. And yet, the Pakistan Air Force was not only present, they were positioned as a key attraction. International journalists surrounded the lead officers for statements, eager to understand what had changed in Pakistan's defense narrative. The answer was in the skies above and in the personnel standing proudly below. One of the highlights of the arrival sequence was the presence of newly upgraded Block 3 variants of the JF-17 Thunder. These weren't just routine aircraft. These were Pakistan's answer to modern aerial combat, featuring cutting-edge avionics, radar-absorbent material, expanded weapon payloads, and state-of-the-art electronic warfare suites. The moment they touched down on British soil, discussions sparked around the tarmac. Defense analysts from the UK, France, and Canada began comparing notes, surprised at the level of advancement these jets had achieved in just a few years. It was more than a show of strength, it was a declaration of capability. Thought the aircraft weren't the only element drawing attention. The pilot roster itself was something new. This year's contingent included 2 female officers, both trained in advanced tactical flying and certified in night operations. Their presence turned heads, and not just because of novelty. In a world increasingly concerned with representation and modern warfare adaptability, Pakistan was silently telling the world that its air force is changing, becoming more inclusive, more skilled, and more globally aware. The 2 female pilots gave short interviews to international media, speaking fluently and confidently about their roles, their training, and their pride in representing their country on the global stage. As the aircraft were guided to their static display positions, Air Force personnel began unloading simulation equipment, briefing kits, and presentation modules. Riot is not just about aircraft flying overhead, it's about what's happening on the ground. Pakistan's presence at the event included a complete interactive pavilion showcasing its aviation industry achievements, partnerships with Chinese aerospace firms, training modules, and even live telemetry feeds from previous combat missions and drills. British schoolchildren on field trips stared wide-eyed. Defense attaches from Southeast Asia and the Middle East took notes. The Pakistan Air Force wasn't here just to perform, they were here to inform, impress, and influence. Observers couldn't ignore the contrast from past appearances. In previous years, PAF delegations arrived with quiet professionalism, often overshadowed by larger air forces and their more publicized hardware. But this time, the energy was different. There was pride but also strategy. The uniforms were sharper. The messaging was clearer. The communication teams were on standby with coordinated press kits and digital media support. Even the selection of aircraft tail art reflected a deep understanding of symbolism, with national motifs, squadron logos, and tribute decals honoring fallen heroes and legendary aces from Pakistan's rich air combat history. The buzz around the airfield was electric. Senior representatives from the RAF, USAF, and even non-allied countries like Brazil and South Africa expressed interest in conducting briefings with PAF officers. Invitations were exchanged, and it became increasingly clear that this year's participation wasn't simply about flying a few stunts and heading home. It was about sending a signal that Pakistan was not only keeping pace with global air power development, but was ready to take a leadership role in some domains. Some called it a diplomatic maneuver. Others called it a rebranding of Pakistan's global image. Whatever the term, the effect was undeniable. The first full day of flying displays at Riot 2025 began with excitement, but no one truly anticipated the shockwave that the Pakistan Air Force would unleash over RAF. As the global aviation community settled into position, analysts, enthusiasts, veterans, journalists, diplomats, and school groups alike, the atmosphere was festive but predictable. Aircraft from NATO countries lined the static displays, crews walked the grounds, and the loudspeakers buzzed with scheduled flight timings. But then, a different tone crackled through the speakers. Now entering display, Pakistan Air Force JF-17 Thunder. At first, some leaned in out of curiosity. By the time the jet pulled its first vertical roll, the entire crowd was on its feet. The JF-17 Thunder has long been regarded as a light multi-role fighter, modest in scale compared to Western heavyweights, like the Eurofighter Typhoon or the F-35. But what the Pakistani pilots demonstrated at Riot 2025 went beyond technical specifications. It was aerial art fused with raw skill and daring execution. The lead aircraft initiated its routine with a breathtaking inverted pass over the main spectator stands, flying so low that even the ground crew looked up in disbelief. It wasn't just aerobatics, it was choreography backed by calculated risk, nerves of steel, and absolute mastery of the aircraft's envelope. As the jet climbed sharply into a double-barrel roll, the commentary box struggled to keep up. Aviation commentators familiar with dozens of global air forces were caught off guard. That was not in the routine. That's not what we expected, one of them said mid-broadcast, his voice cracking with excitement. The aircraft then performed a Cobra maneuver followed by a vertical spiral climb, releasing a controlled burst of flares that shimmered under the overcast British sky. Children screamed in excitement, and veterans watched with folded arms and approving nods. Something special was unfolding. The second aircraft joined the demonstration for a high-speed crossover pass at just above 200 feet altitude, perfectly synchronized, splitting just meters before the central viewing area. The sound delay hit moments later, a deep chest-thumping boom that rattled benches and windows alike. Phones were whipped out. Social media lit up. Within minutes, clips of the maneuvers were circulating on TikTok, Instagram, and X, formerly Twitter, with captions like, "Did you just see what Pakistan did?" and "PAF just stole Riot." Even aviation-focused YouTube channels began uploading raw footage before the routine had even ended, rushing to share what was clearly the most talked-about display of the day. It wasn't just the maneuvers, it was the confidence. The lead pilot, Wing Commander Haris Aslam, carried out a near-impossible slow-speed knife-edge pass with full control, holding the angle for longer than most aircraft of this class are expected to sustain. His wingmen followed with a complex, low-G turn, demonstrating the agility of the upgraded Block 3 JF-17 in a way that no press release or defense white paper ever could. These were not rehearsed stunts copied from airshow handbooks. They were aggressive, unique, and filled with personality, precisely the kind of flying that wins hearts and headlines. What made the moment even more striking was the response from international military observers. Delegations from air forces across Europe and Asia were visibly impressed. Many of them had come expecting to see PAF's participation as symbolic diplomatic courtesy, but now, they were watching a display that rivaled or even exceeded what some of their own demonstration teams could perform. Analysts from Jane's Defense Weekly and Aviation Week were seen scribbling notes rapidly. A few minutes later, the U.S. Air Force's official social media account acknowledged the performance with a respectful post praising the precision, flair, and unexpected brilliance of the PAF display team. After the display, the pilots disembarked to thunderous applause from the crowd. Unlike in past years, when PAF pilots were modestly greeted, this time they were mobbed by both media and fellow aviators. Interviews, photo ops, and fan moments followed. One British schoolboy was heard telling his father, "I want to be a pilot like the Pakistani one." That sort of grassroots impact doesn't show up in official reports, but it reflects the true power of performance beyond the battlefield.